welcome back to VibeCode. I'm your resident business and tech nerd, Jamie Burgess, and in today's episode, we're diving into one of the topics close to my heart in AI-augmented coding, rapid innovation, but while still protecting security, privacy, compliance, and trust. I'm joined by Michelle Rep, who will talk us through what responsible innovation looks like in a modern development environment. Thanks for being here, Michelle. Would you explain to the fine folks watching a little bit about yourself?
Yes, thank you very much for having me here. I am a solutions architect and an engineering manager here at Valorem. I have well over a decade of experience in the software industry, working as an IC all the way up to the architect level.
Awesome. So, retrospectively, sorry, because I was in sales for a lot of the time, so I apologize for all the stuff that we sold that was then somebody else had to go build and figure out. So, and then more recently it moved into tech, which I'm loving in the AI space specifically. So let's start off first by grounding ourselves in some foundational knowledge. So give me the TLDR on what responsible innovation looks like in the context of AI-augmented coding.
Yeah, so really what that means is using AI to accelerate development, but still maintaining trust, safety, and accountability. So it's really not about slowing down teams or being overly cautious, but we really need to work on putting the right guardrails in place so that AI can be used confidently at scale. So that includes governance, security, privacy, and clear ownership over decisions.
Cool. And so, this is great. This is super high level, which is exactly how I want to start. So just give me a couple of ideas of what could possibly go wrong.
Yeah, so what could possibly go wrong is if you ship too quick, you then introduce a lot of risk, especially when it comes around security, compliance gaps, and technical debt. And especially when you're first starting to get going, once AI kind of learns that and it already has that risk in there, then you're just going to end up with more risk down the line.
Oh, that's really interesting. So like spending a bit more time early on de-risking a project so that when you're leveraging the AI augmented coding flow and even AI in other areas of the software development lifecycle, you're not taking that risk with you down the journey. I love that. I've not actually thought that before. So it's a really interesting insight. So obviously the governance piece that you mentioned is huge. So could you summarize the biggest pillars in here and what sort of kind of policies and structures do organizations need to put in place as they embrace AI augmented coding at scale?
Yeah, so organizations really need to put into place the clear usage policies. So where AI is encouraged, restricted, prohibited, what you can and cannot use AI for, what you can and cannot put into AI. They also need to define ownership. So who approves what tools, models, integrations, things like that are allowed to be used. Also within development processes, standardizing workflows. So how the AI generated code is reviewed, tested, and then moving on to approved and deployed out. You also need to think about risk classification in there as well, that there's probably going to be different guidelines when it comes to POCs versus production systems.
Interesting. Yeah, and we're going to come on to some of those things a little bit later because that's an area very interesting to me is the prototyping side, but I don't have to live with the reality of a hardened environment, so I have the easy bit. As we thought about sort of what to enable, what to allow, what not to allow, what I've noticed in recent conversations with organizations is that is actually more of the developers are bringing up a lot more organizational wide conversations. And when we, certainly from my perspective, engage in a lot of these customers early on, we ask them what models do you allow, what MCP servers do you allow, and you're allowed, and they actually don't have any idea yet. And so they're sort of very, very early on the AI maturity model. But then developers still need to get going and they need to make use of all this stuff. So how do you see in your engagements with organizations the balance between navigating the complexity of authorizing all of this stuff while still proceeding and enabling developers to make use of AI as a technology and optimize their software development lifecycle?
Yeah, great question. So that really comes down to, organizations and the engineering teams working together to really determine what tools they are allowed to use. So actually evaluating those tools such as MCP servers, like, are you sending your credentials through to the MCP servers to be able to do something, right? That's a pretty big one. What data is safe to share and where? So what AI systems can you put PII data into, customer data, organizational data, like actually define that out front, and what approval steps are required. And what this does is it actually removes the ambiguity from it. So the engineering team and devs like have a set standard in place. So there is no question around that. That being said, up front, organizations need to put in that effort along with the engineering teams to figure out what those standards are.
Yeah, I like that. I think it does seem like the upfront work is initially going to be a pain to get through, but it scales. So once you've made those decisions and then maybe even assigned a team to it, I think that's really helpful. And from personal experience, I'm seeing more and more people talk about, oh, I just downloaded this MCP server from a public GitHub repo and I just gave it my credentials and let it. I mean, I'm not a security person, but that gives me the shivers thinking about it. So when you have agreed the strong boundaries, or at least the framework as an organization, how can you then kind of politely enforce some of that at the development level? What are some of the things that you're seeing?
At the developer level, we need to make sure that we're treating AI code as human written code. And what that means is that, code reviews and pull requests are still going to be required. And in fact, we're seeing that actually become more time consuming on that front, just to make sure that the code, the AI generated code, does not have any security risks or flaws in it. You got to make sure you have automated scanning in place, such as, secret detection, anything like that you could possibly put into place. The security coding standards need to be baked in from the very start into like GitHub Copilot instruction files or into the agents that you're using. So that it understands that, and so you're not increasing the risk as you go along. And then, of course, there has to be close collaboration between engineering and security teams. And that security team needs to be involved up front. Again, we're shifting left with this.
Yeah, I mean, I'm probably a prime example of somebody who I'll go build something, replit, move it to Cursor, work on it, prototype it, show it to the customer, and they're like, yeah, great, let's go tinker with this and move the button. And then I'll go through a secure, but if we're using, and this kind of blows my mind a little bit actually, it's like people right now, folks who are buying or consuming LLMs from let's call it public provider, if they go and get Grok from XAI or they go and get GPT from OpenAI, they spent all this time building this wonderful identity wrapper and Azure Entra, or they're using, whatever other, like Okta or whatever, they've got these third-party or first-party solutions, and then they're breaking outside of the perimeter that they've spent all this time managing into these external tools that then people are connecting to, kind of just circumnavigating all this. And I'm like, look, obviously Azure Foundry is you've got Entra, you've got all the Purview stuff, Agent 365, you've got all of the bits and pieces to manage all the LLMs from including Anthropic and stuff now. Google's got their Vertex, Amazon, AWS has got SageMaker and Bedrock. They've got their own identity providers and their own security boundaries. It kind of blows my mind. I'm going to get off my soapbox in a second, because this is kind of surprising. it surprises me when people have said, oh, I've got this ChatGPT license. I'm like, okay, how are you managing it? And they're like, we don't. We use there's API keys. And you're like, oh gosh. So as we think more about where the data specifically is going, how do you think about what that looks like around data sovereignty, sensitive information, PII, all that kind of stuff?
Yeah, that's a great question. And that's a huge topic because organizations need to be very clear about what source code configs, data can be shared with AI tools. And if they're not clear, right, you get into the concept of developers are going to grab down an MCP server and just share out their personal credentials with the MCP server. And that, of course, is not good. So again, it kind of goes back to the basics of security and privacy, there's least privilege, right? So use identities, roles, least privileged roles to be able to access this. Don't send in credentials to that. But organizations also need to think about, how prompts and outputs are logged or retained, and whether or not AI is trained on customer data or internal data. Again, all these are very important to know for developers up front, just so they don't get into a situation where they just share their credentials to an MCP server because they weren't instructed not to, right?
Yeah.
So it really comes down to just knowledge within the organization on what AI can do, what it can't do, what you should be doing. Actually taking all the employees and learning them up on the red flags there.
Yep. So there's so many questions I've got on this now, because I think I guess the first thing I would ask is, you mentioned to treat the AI written code as human generated code, which I kind of like the idea of it. I personally have treated the AI as like a junior developer, or someone that like a mentee, or someone who's on a summer placement. That's not like they'll do all the work, but the quality could vary, and you don't know where the quality varies. You have to inspect it. And so then I feel like we're just kicking the can down the road from the actual code creation to then the code review and then the code test, and then so that AI eventually will catch up with that, I'm sure. How can you, or what advice do you have for organizations that are thinking about what to do with the AI generated code? So now you're assuming it is a human piece of generated code. Is there then, like, if you picked up Bob's code from across the way, you'd want to inspect it and make sure it didn't have problems with it. So let's say we do that now. What can we do, an organization do, to think about handling that AI generated code with the same scrutiny, and assuming that AI doesn't carry all that security elements necessarily inside of it as it's built?
Yeah, so I think what I've seen a lot happen within the past few months is that we have developers and even other leadership people that they pick up AI generated code and they think it's good to go. They think it's good to ship, and they don't review it, right? I've seen devs kind of code up something using AI, and then they just present a PR without looking over it that much, right? We need to really teach our devs to review every single line of code, because now it's not so much that we're using engineers to actually create the code, but now they're actually they can become the creator of this code and actually have more creativity in it, in determining whether or not that line of code is acceptable. Is that the correct design? Are there security issues? Is there privacy issues with that code? Really diving into that, which I think actually allows you to be more of an engineer than just sitting down and just hammering out code for
right. Totally. That's like the joy I have. I don't understand any coding languages to any level of depth. I can kind of read what sections are doing, but I understand the technology landscape, and now using AI I can create a lot, but it's not great code because it's not reviewed at the organizational or the enterprise level. And so some things I've started doing is, if I'm pushing to a GitHub private review, I'll have some code review agents that are, based on security, code quality, compliance, ethical guidelines, RAI, responsible AI and stuff. What do you see AI offering? This is kind of an inception to solve some of these problems, to help. Now we're creating, I saw Andre Kopathi posted something about vibe coding now is having a bit of a renaissance, in that, not even that it was that long ago it was released, but he's now talking about people that are producing code, senior developers and engineers, because they have a robust review process and pipeline. So they're AI's writing the code, and then they've got another AI reviewing it, and then a different AI reviewing it. What do you see? How does that play out in the enterprise and the organizational space?
That's actually really interesting, because that I've just started to see pick up more and more. And while I do think you probably need a human to review the code, right? Because you have to have that human actually understand security and privacy. You can have agents trained on that, but AI will make mistakes. And again, you said it earlier, treat AI as that it's a junior dev, right? It's still going to need a very senior or architect level person reviewing it. So while you can set up these agents to help with the code review process, and even like where we have even like scripts that we run against PRs that kind of, do code review processes for us and kind of help us like bring up, it kind of raises up risks or issues or something like that. I still think like there needs to be a human in the loop there. So yes, it'll speed things up and it's great to be able to use that, but you still need the human.
Yeah, interesting. And so we spoke to Mithuna a few episodes ago about the idea of a team being made up of both AI agents, but also the human being the orchestrator of that team, or AI puppeteer I've heard before, AI agent puppeteer I've heard before, which sounds like an odd job title to put on LinkedIn. But yeah, it's funny because I think, I've talked before about the security tug of war between we want more access, we want to do things faster and quicker and less interrupted, and then security being like, well, you can make a lot more mistakes now because the stuff you're not reviewing is not under your purview. And now we're seeing this new, I wouldn't say it's new really, but amplified problem around privacy. And we've talked a little bit about PI, but how do you think about helping users understand, because code review agents won't spot this in my view anyway. You maybe have a privacy review agent, but privacy specifically around, you mentioned before, sharing the least amount or accessing the least amount. How do you think about protecting consumers of tools, both in an organization, if they're organizations that are building it for consumers, around like centralizing around privacy as a concept in agents and AI?
So like, think about it, like, would you allow a human to access certain things, like another human, right? Like, to me, that's the biggest thing. So if AI is requesting more access than what you would give somebody else over here that you hardly know, why are you giving them that access?
Yeah.
So, or why are you giving them that data, right? If I'm not going to give this person over here my personal information, probably shouldn't give it to AI either, or at least that should be like a red flag that I go and I talk with people and figure out what's actually acceptable there. So, and again, it has to be a universal rule. So if a tool isn't going to be approved for like direct access, then humans shouldn't proxy the access on its behalf, right?
I think that's the challenge with the landscape right now is people are used to a lot of these social media apps where it's a give-get, and the get is perceived to be, oh great, I'm getting all this stuff, but the people aren't necessarily aware of the gives that they're giving, their locations, their ages, their likes, that sort of stuff. And I think, as we talk about responsible AI, we at Valorem obviously have a pretty strong responsible AI practice to make sure that people are transparent. But like, as I think more about the privacy, the hidden privacies, how do we think about that as sort of a trust and transparency perspective to help organizations, and in your experience, think about that?
So I think organizations generally, they probably need to think about it like third-party software, right? Most organizations usually have policies around third-party software, like whether or not you can use different things or whether or not you can't due to privacy and security there. So I think for AI, it needs to kind of have the same approach there. Everything that's AI out there needs to be approached like a third-party software tool. And I think a lot of people, they believe like, oh, AI, I'm just going to funnel this stuff in and it's going to do all this stuff for me. Well, think about it like a third-party software. Like, Is that acceptable for third-party software to do? Like these MCP servers and stuff like that. And if not, or if it needs to be reviewed, but that's where like organizations, they all have, or at least what I've seen, they all have a list of approved software. So, and unfortunately, a lot of those AI stuff, it's fairly new, so they're probably not on that list. So that's a big one that organizations need to be probably adding to.
Yeah, and in my sort of experience, seeing people grab various rapid prototyping tools to spin up something, giving access, Azure app registration, or building stuff with knowledge from internally within the organization, and not really having a limit on what can be shared. And that data then may or may not be proprietary, but it's then in that third-party tool, as you said, and then then they've got ownership and visibility into it. So definitely, I agree with you. Having the policies in place at the organizational level goes right back to what you said at the beginning. I think is really important. Okay, so this topic kind of I don't know how I feel about it, because it's as we think about auditability, AI agents have a chain of thought in when you're watching them, but when you have agents that are doing tasks that you come back and really, if people are now claiming, oh, we trust the the models enough to then put the code off to then the reviews and all the rest of it, what does the auditability look like? And how, given how quick and easy it is to build code with AI, logging and auditing seems to be an afterthought. And being able to go back and see what the agent did step by step to understand its processes. How do you think about traceability and auditability when in your development workflow, when you're in using AI-augmented coding or working with organizations?
Yeah, that's a really great question. And it really needs to be thought up front. So we really need to understand who used AI, what AI was used for, when it was used, things like that. When it comes to actually, creating code, when I go in and I look at PRs, I want to understand how much of that PR was actually AI generated code. And it's difficult, I say right now, just because GitHub Copilot doesn't actually have a very good way to I can't go into somebody else's code and tell GitHub Copilot, be how much of this code was AI generated? It doesn't know, right? Pros and cons to that, but I'd say the biggest con to that is just that we don't know what's actually AI generated code if we haven't actually worked on it.
Yeah.
So that's a big one that I think is going to come out, and we're probably going to see. We're probably going to see a lot of stuff come out from Microsoft on that, is my guess, around Copilot and tracking different things and tracking how many people within an organization are actually using it back behind the scenes, their daily usage and stuff like that.
Yeah, that's really interesting. So what I'm hearing kind of is a zero trust for AI generated code that then needs to be read and reviewed and PR just like any other code, which is great. And hopefully seeing some sort of metadata tagging around code changes that identify what's been AI generated and what's not. Cool. Okay. Well, one of the other challenges with AI specifically in augmented coding, AI-augmented coding, is AI is just evolving so fast. It's a full-time job to stay up to date with all the latest changes and all the things that are improving and the new models and what their quirks are. And I've seen both ends of the spectrum from organizations. I've seen those who jump in right at the beginning and they're constantly having to change. I think it's stabilizing a little bit now, but they were having to evolve and evolve and evolve, which was a lot of work. But I've seen those who have waited till now, and they're trying to wait for the perfect moment to jump into AI. And I just think there isn't one. It's just got a case of get going. So how do organizations think about staying current with AI and being relevant and leveraging the latest AI development or innovation, and make sure their AI tools simultaneously meet the same security, quality and performance expectations?
So it all comes down to continuous learning, right? So you always have to understand the new risks and limitations with new tools or new approaches. You need to keep adapting your workflows, and that's going to be a continuous process, right? Because here at Valorem, we're working on that right now. I'm working on a team for the past 6 months, over 6 months, working on this new workflow that's required. And we're finding pros and cons over the time, and there's not a book written on this, so you kind of need to adapt it to your organization, your project, what works for your team, but still have standards in place. And then you need to avoid any over-reliance on AI or any misuse of AI. So again, you're putting guardrails in place, you're putting policies in place, but this all comes down to continuous learning. And continuously adapting things as you continue to move forward as an organization.
Yeah, I think I've heard people talk about picking the perfect tool, and like, I don't know if that's the thing for the next 5 years. Like picking the perfect concept or the perfect workflow maybe, and the workflow maybe improving depending on the tools evolve. And I think building agility and adaptability into your decisions right now, I think is smart. And on the learning side, if I was to give one piece of advice to anyone listening, it would be like the learning on the AI side is so important, because people's variance of knowledge, their confidence with leveraging it has, those who are more confident have gained a faster knowledge, and those who are less confident to jump in and try some stuff have sort of struggled a little bit. And we have AI Fridays, which I've mentioned also in previous episodes. And also what you guys don't know as viewers is Michelle and I are on a secret society inside the company called the Guild, well, AI Guild. And basically we try and help figure out how we're going to help with people's AI readiness. And ultimately the goal is to help people stay informed and share. Everyone's learning the same stuff. Everyone's learning. It's not like one group is, just going to learn one area, and they might specialize, but we all need to disseminate this AI information super quickly to everybody so they can stay up to date. And I think, what have you seen, Michelle, in terms of organizational readiness and not in Valorem, because we've now embedded that as part of our practices, show up and showcase or listen. But what have you seen in organizations you work with that have done and landed AI well, or AI adoption well?
Yeah. So developers need to be trained on how to work with AI, not just use it. That's a big one. You can't just throw GitHub Copilot at them and tell them to use it. You have to teach them how to use it correctly. You have to teach them, how to set up an agent correctly, things like that. But also having security and engineering aligned on expectations there. Leadership needs to reinforce responsible usage here. And also leadership needs to be not only concerned about speed. I keep hearing, AI, it's supposed to speed us up by X amount, right? And it is, and it's a great tool, but you do need to put in the effort up front, and you do need to make sure that you're reviewing AI generated code. And so you need to have an emphasis on to make this AI, use it responsibly rather than just focusing on speed. Speed will come as you focus on the other things first.
That's a really interesting, I like that a lot, is don't use AI for the sake of speed. Use AI to actually, think more broadly about all the various processes that are needed. So the security, the compliance, the governance, the guardrails, etc. Bake that in, and then the speed will be an output, an outcome of those changes. That's really interesting. 'Cause, you're right. Like a lot of the execs and the leaders regularly talk about, we can go build this twice as fast, and because in various companies they're obviously beholden to the board of directors and stuff. But ultimately, there is a spectrum. You rush it out too fast. And we had this conversation previously in another episode. If you're not embarrassed by your MVP, you're not moving fast enough, right? And then now there's like the MVP of the world, but you still have to have security and governance and compliance and all the wrappers around that. Like if you're embarrassed by it, it's different from, we've dished out our public keys or private keys or something and embedded that into it. So, or we left a database open or an unsecured API or whatever. So I think, that's a really good way of looking at it, is don't force the speed. The speed will come with the right processes and thinking. And I like that a lot. So speaking of previous episodes, we also talked about how developers' day-to-days, what their day looks like, has changed over the last even 6 months, right? How do you see that continuing to change with this notion of responsible innovation?
So developers, and I kind of hit on this before, but developers are going to have more creativity and be more curators and decision makers, not just code producers. So like AI is going to suggest coding patterns, it's going to suggest solutions, but developers ultimately decide on what fits best into the system, and they ultimately evaluate the trade-offs. Like you can totally use AI to help you with those things, but you ultimately, as the developer, are putting that in place or saying, AI, go down that path, not this path. Developers will ultimately ensure security, performance, and maintainability, which to me actually, from my experience of moving from an IC way back in the day up through, being a lead and now into a solutions architect position, like that excites me, because to me, just doing the grunt coding on a daily basis sometimes gets a little boring. And so this actually makes it more fun, and it makes you able to make those decisions. And I think we're going to actually see engineers actually become really quickly more senior level really quickly, just because they're going to get exposure to deciding into what fits best into the system, giving developers more that freedom to run with AI, but keep AI on the guardrails and evaluate the decisions and the trade-offs and the design.
Yeah, that's really interesting. So do you see developers having a broader code base? Take something like, I'm gonna make this really easy, like Windows, right? Where the developer would be focused on maybe start menu or something specific. But now, as AI is enabling that developer to have more insight and control over a lot of a broader piece of code, they can then make decisions and influence that. But I'm gonna ask you one really controversial question. We might want to cut this afterwards, I don't know, we'll see. But how do I put this politely, how much control do you think developers should have over the product versus, say, business, marketing, and feedback, and all the other roles? Because I can see this happening, right? The engineers will have more control, they'll make more decisions, but just because they can doesn't mean they should. And is the decision they're making the right one for the business goals or the marketing goals or the sales goals? And so how do organizations start thinking about that? Because I think that's going to be a real challenge, because I can see it all happening.
Yeah. So I think you're right in the fact, so what this is going to make, developers' tasks are going to become broader, right? They're going to be more high level, actually looking at the code, making sure it's going best practices, security, privacy, things of that nature. However, I don't feel like that they should be making decisions on the product. They could advise, just because developers and the product mindset are two different things. And I've seen developers, some of them do have good knowledge into product, but at the same time, some of them, they get into such a technical mindset on what is possible versus what is not possible. Sometimes I see developers trying to take the easy path, which may not be the best path for the user, right? And I think we've all seen applications out there that as you go into it, you're like, oh, this is kind of clunky. Why didn't they just do that? Well, they probably didn't do that because there's a technical challenge back behind it. And the developer was just I'm just going to do this for right now, for phase one. While developers, they could be definitely, suggesting things on the product. I think the designs that they should be really evaluating is, so product gives them a feature, and then developers run with that feature at more of a broad level and have AI help them on the code design on how to get there.
Yep. No, I love that. And it's very eloquently and delicately put. I love it. Because it's a contentious topic. I think I've seen many of products, and a good friend of mine who's in technical marketing has always said you can very quickly see which products are going to succeed or fail, because the engineering leader will either approach the marketing team with, hey, how should we market this? What do you think? Or they'll approach it with, this is how you should market my product. And so the collaborative nature that we have in an organization, and we talked about this in previous episodes, the organizational, it's actually with Tone, all the organizational problems that you have will translate into your AI problems at the organizational level. And so he was advising a lot, is do the upfront work as well, and think about a lot of this stuff up front so that it is robust, it is scalable, and you're not kind of constantly chasing your tail trying to figure it out afterwards. So yeah, it's something I've observed over the last 9 months, and where the decision tree is going and who controls the funds, and of course in organizations how that works and where we fit in. So before we close, as a solutions architect, when you build your, let's say, mind map of what a solution looks like, let's zoom right out and think about, responsible innovation. What are the top, just to sort of, reiterate, but specifically personally to you, what are the top things that you find yourself adding or reiterating with organizations when you're working with them on projects?
I think the biggest thing that comes to mind here is speed without trust isn't sustainable.
Mm-hmm.
Organizations will succeed. Organizations that will succeed in this AI innovation piece will be the ones that can scale this with governance, security, and accountability built in from the start. You might see organizations go fast to begin with, but they might fail because they're not accounting for that. So I think it comes down to my head of speed without trust isn't sustainable. You got to have some trust in there and some guardrails.
Yeah, it's very poignant. I think there's everyone knows that MIT study that talks about that 95% of AI projects fail, and there's a vast number of reasons, a lot of which comes down to poor planning, basically rushing into something, trying to knock something up and not having the buy-in from the organization to invest in how that should look. And I'll be honest, there's still a lot of stuff that even if you do put the work in up front, still questions will come up. Oh, this new thing's been released, or there's this MCP, or there's that. And then you have to, as long as you have an established team or process or thought process that you can go through to figure out whether we're going to or not going to, and whether we should or whether we shouldn't. I think that's the key message. Well, this has been great. I love this conversation. This is, a topic that's very close to my heart, because I do create a lot of problems for people that are doing all the real environments. And, you look at the real POCs and the real production stuff, and I'm only on the prototyping side. But, using the knowledge that you've created on, in the work that you do, shared with the organization, I can then inherit some of that and improve what I'm doing earlier on to make everybody's lives easier. So that's also beneficial. But also, thanks so much for your time, Michelle. Really appreciate it. I think, responsible innovation should be embedded in, as you mentioned, in all aspects of AI-augmented development to allow it to scale safely, securely, and sustainably. And I think we've covered probably all walks of that in this conversation. So thanks for everyone for joining us. Be sure to come back to the next episode where we will continue exploring the future of AI in the enterprise. Thanks so much.